Shirtless in the heat of the night, Jasper Colt peeled his naked back from the filthy vinyl chair next to the open window. He had watched and waited for hours, though he had all the time in the world. The ticking clock, the rising and setting of suns, meant nothing to him. Time does not fly. Time only dies. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Indie Book Club, the first episode of 2022, the episode I'm calling our Spring 2022 edition. I'm so excited to be coming back. I'm so excited to be talking about this book, and I'm so excited for all of you to join me here on my website, just my website, courtesy of our new corporate sponsor, VioStream. They are an amazing video host for all of your business video hosting needs. You can check them out at viostream.com. Now that the pitch is out of the way, let's get to the books. If you've been paying attention at all to our social media or the first video of this series for 2022, you know that the book we're talking about is Ashes in Venice. You can see that without getting too much reflection. It's a very reflecty cover. Ashes in Venice by an IBC alum, Gojan Nikolich. So we have a little bit of a different format here with Indie Book Club in 2022, a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more what you might find if you were to, say, hire a developmental editor for your manuscript. It's not exactly a developmental edit because the book is already done, so it's not quite as in-depth as a developmental edit would go, but you'll kind of get the topics that would be touched on in such a thing, as well as, I think, a pretty good review of the book. Before we start, I'm going to read the back copy, so we are all on the same page as to what the back copy says. A psychopath with size 16 shoes, nursing home hookers, and an irreverent Las Vegas homicide detective with a gambling habit set the tone for this offbeat tale of revenge and retribution. Blackjack addict Frank Savick is deeply in debt and facing family problems when he's asked to delay his retirement to catch a vigilante killer who murders other murderers in a manner the veteran cop has never seen. While dead bodies stack up in quick succession, the motorcycle-riding policeman gets reluctantly involved with a desperate mother who will do anything to get justice for her dead son. Savick, his investigation complicated by a suspected FBI cover-up and a prison bribery scandal, is also unaware that the quirky murderer might also be the solution to his own financial and domestic dilemma. Add the brooding backdrop of Venice, Italy, and a vengeful killer who reads Shakespeare, and you have a teasing psychological thriller where surgical bone saws and spiders are just tools of the trade. Yes, there are spiders. There are spiders too, pretty intensely. The other kind of tricky thing about doing a developmental edit or a faux developmental edit or an example developmental edit, whatever you want to call it for a review, is I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm probably going to. That's the other thing about a real book club is if you're going for if this is an actual book club, we all would have already read the book, so there are no spoilers. If you do want to be surprised by this book, I will just say, there's going to be spoilers, so don't watch beyond here. Just know that this book is totally worth your time. It is so engrossing and it moves so fast, and I just loved it. Even though there were parts that were completely emotionally devastating for me personally, I literally have not cried at a book since I read the last of the Dark Tower series, which if you haven't read it, then you don't know what I'm talking about. If you have read it, then you know. This had a similar effect. It just happened. Okay, sorry about the total change in lighting. My ring light completely burnt out, so now I had to get another one. Apologies. Anyways, we're going to go through the first 5 chapters of this book because that is where you really get, the tone and a lot of information right away. It's where most people, if they're going to keep going with the book, you're going to lose them. So the first chapter, very first chapter, you have Jasper Colt, the hitman, in a Las Vegas motel, seedy motel. He is ruminating in this room and he's waiting for somebody. And as the chapter progresses, he finds this person, he knocks them out, drags them back to the room, and proceeds to basically eviscerate them. And throughout the dialogue and throughout the description of the action, we come to find out that this man is a criminal, probably a murderer, possibly a pedophile. He definitely killed a young person and maybe did more, but it's never said in the book, which is, I think, part of one of the themes of the book it plays into one of the themes of the book that I'll get to later. Chapter 2, we jump to Frank Savick, arguably our main character, maybe our secondary main character, depending. It's either him or Colt. They're kind of neck and neck for who's really at the top. We get him basically ruminating on the use of the word shit and how many ways he was taught the word shit and different usages of it. It's a verb, it's a noun, it's an adjective. This is the second chapter, and this is our introduction to the character, which gives you a very clear idea of just how, what did they call him? Irreverent Las Vegas homicide detective. So that is reinforced right away. At the very end, we also see a short conversation between him and his boss, Monahan, talking about him retiring soon. So we have characterization, a little bit of family history, and the fact that he is on his way out the door. Chapter 3, we meet Felicia Mendez and William Jardine. Savick is also there. We are at a sentencing hearing for William Jardine, the killer who killed Felicia Mendez's son. This might be one of the best chapters and potentially one of the best, almost one of the best standalone short stories I've read in a while. It is incredibly painful. It puts you in such close third of this grieving mother in this courtroom, watching the man that killed her son, though convicted, he's now being sentenced, which is really a situation where the judge is deciding, okay, what is this woman's son's life worth in years, worth in another life? It's the measurement of her pain. And it is so heartbreaking. Her whole story, in fact, is just the most beautifully tragic story for a character, not even a main character, just she's a tertiary character probably. It's so wonderful. It's part of the reason I would just wholeheartedly recommend this book. I could go on and on about that chapter alone, but basically what we learn is William Jardine is this bad guy. He is getting sent to prison, and at the end of the chapter, she cuts his face with a concealed knife. So he is also injured before he ends up going off to serve his sentence, which I believe is a life sentence at Silver Hill Prison in Nevada. The fourth chapter, we discover the first body. It's discovered in a printing press, newspaper press. We don't know who it is, but we know it's not the guy that Colt was killing in the motel room earlier. So now we've got two bodies. One whose name we don't know, and one who I think we know his name because he worked at the printing press and it's his boss that finds him. But we don't know who killed him, although, we know. The fifth chapter, we see Frank Savick riding his motorcycle. Again, motorcycle riding cop as dictated by the back copy. He stops at a rest stop. He ogles a young girl. He talks to an old guy. We find out that his wife is in memory care facility. She has Alzheimer's or dementia, and he is running out of money to pay for it. It is alluded to the fact that it's because of gambling, but it's kind of wishy-washy. And then at the end of the chapter, he gets on his motorcycle and drives away, and as he's on his way back to the city, he comes across a car accident that is the girl he was ogling. Her car got smashed up, and he watches her die. Another just beautifully rendered, horribly sad little snippet of a story that it could be its own story. And the girl is never talked about again. The scene almost could not be there. Like, you don't really need that chapter. You could have worked in his wife's situation and his mounting debts in a bunch of different ways. But I have a theory as to why it's included, and I'll go into that in a minute. So that's the first 5 chapters. I'm gonna just include a little bit about chapter 6 because that's where the plot really takes off. That's where we find out that the body we found in chapter 4, we find out what his deal was. He's another ex-con. He was another child murderer. He shares some similar traits to the body in the first chapter, the guy that we know that Jasper Colt killed, and also William Jardine. There might be some connections there. And we find out that Frank is prevailed upon by his boss to stick around and delay his retirement until the case is solved. So 6 is where the plot really goes, okay, we're off and running. We know what Frank is doing. We have an idea of kind of the dynamics between Colt and Frank, what might happen. We know that there's this, bad guy that's injured. Probably something's gonna end up happening with him. And we have this obviously grieving, vengeful woman in the picture. But really, I would argue that if you're not liking what's going on by chapter 5, you're not gonna like this book. Like, the plot, yes, it's fun, it's, a vengeance thriller, those are interesting, but the heartbreak that happens in chapters, 3 and 5, those I think are more what this book really is at its core. And that's what I'm talking about when I get into the themes of this book. So the first theme, obviously, we're talking about a vengeance thriller. We're going to talk about the theme of revenge. There's that famous saying, I think it's the Chinese proverb that says, before you start on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves, meaning that revenge will probably kill the person you're trying to hurt, but it's also going to destroy you too. And that is pretty well reinforced in this book. Again, I don't really want to spoil too many things, but let's just say that anyone who goes looking for revenge in this book gets it, but maybe things don't really work out for them, but maybe they also do. It's kind of tricky the way it's handled. And I think the way that I would like to kind of bring that all together is this book puts revenge against justice and then against just desserts. So revenge is an extremely all-consuming thing, and it's bloody, and it, is irrational, and it's not something you really want to go for if you can avoid it, if you can stop yourself and rein in your emotions. You don't want to actually go seek revenge because it will destroy you. But justice, as dictated in this book, can also be very flaccid. All of the villains that were in this book, they are recidivists. They had been in jail before, and I believe all of them were either allowed to escape or given work release, or they got off on some technicality because their lawyer was tricky and did some stuff and they didn't get the sentence they deserved. It doesn't portray justice as the be-all, end-all of, oh, we gave you justice, now everything's fixed. He had his day in court, he was found guilty, boom. It portrays it as like a bit lacking, I guess, is what I'll say. So I think what Ashes in Venice does is it tries to marry the two with this idea of just desserts. People who seek revenge, they get it, they get what they want, and they get what they deserve. So I'm going to spoil 2 things right now. I'm going to spoil the very end, and I'm going to spoil Felicia Mendez's story. So if you don't want to hear any of that, skip to the next thing. Jasper Colt, our big guy seeking revenge, he is killing murderers because someone killed his family. One of these, William Jardine, killed his family, his wife and his 2 daughters. And that is where the title comes from, Ashes in Venice. He is seeking revenge for his family, and he also, through the course of this book, arranges to have his family's ashes sent to, I believe, the Street of Angels in Venice, and stored in a statue of angels. with this hotelier who he has a relationship with. And he has sought revenge for himself, for other grieving parents. And he gets that revenge in a way that does include spiders. That I'm not going to spoil because it's so good. And then at the end of the book, he goes to Venice and goes up to the top of St. Mark's Cathedral and jumps and kills himself. You know, he gets his revenge, but he's also destroyed himself in this situation. He was a doctor, he worked for the FBI, he was a stand-up guy, and by the end of the book, he's also turned himself into a monster, and then obliterates himself. But at the same time, his family is in Venice in the way. He will be, you know, interred in Venice, we can assume. They've been reunited in that way. So his just desert is, yes, he was destroyed, but he's also reunited with his family. Felicia Mendez, very similar story. She seeks revenge on William Jardine by trying to enlist a family member of hers, a gang member, to get him killed in prison. And they say, okay, yeah, we'll do this for you, but you got to mule some drugs in a balloon inside your lady bits. And she does this because she's so focused on revenge, and the balloon ends up bursting inside her and she dies. And that's all very tragic. And that's a story of, you know, that fatal flaw. You're focused on revenge. You're so myopic. You can't see that this is destroying you, and that fatal flaw destroys you. It's very Greek in that way. But it's not totally that way, because when she's in court, well, this is going to make me cry. This is the part that really made me cry when I read this book. During the scene when she's in court and seeing him get sentenced, she is picturing her son. William Jardine videotaped the murder of her son, and during that videotape, apparently her son could be seen, there was no audio, but he could be seen mouthing, "Mommy, mommy." And that's what's in her head during the court scene. It's horrible. And as she is going into shock in the jail after the drugs are coursing through her body and she's about to die, she sees her little boy and he's saying, "Mommy, mommy." Damn it. It is tragic that she has allowed her quest for revenge to destroy herself, but she's also reunited with her son too. So in her way, she's gotten exactly what she deserves, both good and bad. Okay, this is what happens when you become a mom. You get all emotional about kids and stuff and other things. Horrible. I hate it. Anyways, and then we have Savick, who, the thing about him is he doesn't really have much of a character arc in the story. Like, he, yes, maybe learns that gambling is bad, but we don't really see him gambling or chasing his losses or doing anything really destructive for the gambling. It's just kind of said, oh yeah, he's a gambler. He lost money at blackjack. It's bad news. But it's never really like made a thing that he would be redeemed from in the end, even though he's not gambling in the end either. He's not gambling in the beginning. It's, you know, nothing really changes there. His external situation changes. At the beginning, he's in major debt for various reasons, probably associated with gambling. He can't keep his wife in the nursing home, the mental care facility, for very long. In the end, he ends up sneaking her out, kind of leaving them with the bill, sneaking her out of her room, bringing her back home. And he does go back to the nursing home to like square up and make it right. And they're like, oh, your bill is paid in full. I think it's something like $42,000 was the balance. It's done. I believe through some research that I didn't catch the first time, I believe what happened was Jasper Colt, he had been hacking into the police database the whole time, keeping tabs on what the police knew about his activities. He had a bunch of money from the work he's been doing. He transferred that money into Frank's account and paid off the nursing home because he knew that Frank was the cop on the case. They never talk. He and Frank never interact the whole time. The only time he sort of has a tangential relationship with him is there's a moment where after Frank brings his wife home, she escapes the house and goes to the Venetian where Jasper Colt happens to be staying. Frank sees on the video cam footage a man talk to her, and I believe that's supposed to be Jasper Colt, who knows who she is. and is nice to her. And that's the closest they ever get to actually talking in this book. Speaking of the Venetian, another theme in here is artifice. There's a great quote. I'm gonna try to find it here. Yeah, this is a chapter of Jasper Colt's. He's actually meeting with the father of the child that Henry Mephisti killed. This is where he gets the assignment for Henry Mephisti murder. But this is before he ends up meeting them. And he's talking about Las Vegas. Colt walked out into the bright night and stood for a time on the replica of the 16th century bridge that spanned the entrance to the hotel parking garage. The entire city was a neon apparition rising from the dark desert. He could see the Eiffel Tower, Caesar's Palace. The Manhattan skyline was a block away, compressed, oddly foreshortened and seemingly off-kilter as if drawn by a cartoonist. The broad boulevard, packed with inching traffic, was a landscape pierced by the landmarks of dead and dying empires. Colt heard the thump of a cannon firing, the cheer of a crowd, the evening pirate ship performance at Treasure Island. He could see the swaying mast of a brigantine, a buccaneer in knee breeches swinging on a rope past artificially aged and torn canvas sails. There's a number of passages like that in this book talking about the fakeness of Las Vegas, the artifice of everything. And while I personally take exception to the fact that that's a problem, I understand what the theme is here, and I equated it to the idea of revenge. And I think it's related to this idea that when love is ripped away from you, when someone you love is gone, and you have all of these emotions, these beautiful emotions, these emotions of love and tenderness and affection that have nowhere to go, they turn into something dark, like revenge. And that might be natural, but it's not real. The revenge that you feel, this passion you feel towards, getting your revenge on someone for what they've done, for what they've taken from you, it looks like it might be a solution, but it's not really a solution, and that's why it ends up being this disaster for everyone who tries to undertake it. Another theme here is the theme of memories. Jasper Colt basically lives in his memories. He is staying at the Venetian because he's obsessed with the time he spent in Venice with his wife. He relives several instances over the course of the book. He talks about, of course, the murder of his family. He thinks about the first case he took. He is plagued by the memories of what has gone on. And this is juxtaposed by Savic's wife, who can't remember anything that's going on. She doesn't remember her husband half the time. She's also speaking Italian, so there's that Italy-Venice connection going on there. And I think it all boils down to this idea that memory is both a blessing. It helps us hold on to things that are wonderful. It's, walking down memory lane is seen as a beautiful thing. But when you have this pain or you've had this loss, it becomes a nightmare. And in that way, maybe it's better not to remember. Savic's wife is perfectly happy, but then he is also watching her. He is burdened with all of these memories that she can no longer access. So he has all of the memories for both of them that she has completely forgotten. And in that way, they are also a pain for him too. So it's this dichotomy of the pain and the glory of what memory is, this double-edged sword of memory. The last theme addresses that car accident in chapter 3, I believe it was, where Frank comes across the young girl that he was sort of looking at lustfully at the rest stop, and he thought she was very beautiful and young, and he sees her die in this car accident that serves absolutely no point in the plot of the book. At first glance, you're like, why is this here? This is horrible. But that's exactly why it's here. It's because this book is talking about how horrible it is to kill a mockingbird, is what I basically said in this book. It is expounding on the pointless destruction of beauty in the most awful ways. And that is there because the killers that Jasper Colt goes after are doing this over and over and over again. They are either doing it, they did it in the past, and it's referenced. The two bodies that aren't really characters in the book and William Jardine, they wear necklaces of the kids that they killed in this awful tribute and souvenir kind of trophy thing of the destruction they've caused. Henry Mephisti, who, like I said, is a B-villain that comes up in the middle of the book, he is in an active crime spree, murdering people left and right in horrible ways. You're terrified about what this guy is going to do because he's completely non-preferential, just kills anybody for any reason, essentially. He's chaos. Indiscriminate killer. That's what I'm looking for. The book is very good at not only saying, look at how horrible this is, these guys are monsters, but really making you feel just the devastation of this destruction. This is done through Felicia Mendez beautifully. It's done through Jasper Colt's recollecting of his family's murder, and it's done more subtly by never really going into strong detail about what the victims went through. They never explain, they never even really say the word pedophile, as I said, but it's heavily implied. It is heavily implied that what these men have done is so terrible that we can't even speak about it. And more than that, speaking about it would destroy the beauty that they destroyed further. And we don't want to give any credence to that destruction. We don't want to lend it any kind of air. So the book focuses on the grief that was left behind and the beauty of what is gone. They focus on the kids and the teenagers and the victims before they were taken. And I think that's such a beautiful way of writing. It gets a little bit muddled, like exactly what the situation was, and why we're hating these guys, but we know enough. And I think it's a really interesting way to write a thriller. There's a lot of, there's plenty of gory stuff happening, but it's all focused on the killers once Jasper Colt gets done with them in ways that, as the book says, ways Savic's never seen before, creative ways, and ways that are absolutely, they're just desserts. Kind of went through character arcs already. I don't really have much more to say about that. Action and dialogue, I'm not going to get into specifics here. All you need to know is that there were some moments in the book where there were chapters where Savic was on the phone to like forensics, or there were extended crime scene investigations happening that dragged a little bit. It was a lot of talking, a lot of phone calls, a lot of like computer searching, and even Jasper Colt had some of those too, where it was like, oh, I'm answering an email. All necessary, all information you need, just not delivered in the most captivating way. But I didn't really care. Like, I just sort of saw that and I was like, okay, well, this is information that I'm probably gonna need later. Moving on. And inevitably, the very next scene was something either, emotionally gripping or funny or just really well told, like the lyricism or just the phrasing of the way things are put forth just pulls you in. There wasn't a whole lot of action, I guess, which might be a little bit weird for a book labeled thriller. There wasn't like big gunfights, there wasn't punching a lot. It was more subtle than that. It was very slow burn. The scenes were internally tense, like to themselves. But there was no like fear that, someone that we wanted to live was gonna die, except maybe Felicia Mendez. But that became pretty obvious why that was happening. This was set in Vegas. The whole book is set in Vegas. There's mentions out to Venice, but the book is a Vegas book. Yes. Which is a huge plus for me. That being said, there was some stuff that wasn't totally accurate to the map of the city. Like, to say that New York is a block away from the Venetian is just patently wrong. Is that gonna make you hate the book? Of course not. In fact, nobody cares about it except me. Also, Treasure Island doesn't do pirate shows anymore. It's never really said when this book is set. There's email. I don't know how long actually Treasure Island shows have been gone, but it's been a while. It might have actually been like when email was not really a big thing that it's been gone. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look that up, and I'll do a thing like I do sometimes when I add fun facts. I think I have room over my head here for that. Hopefully I did it. Not really anything that's gonna stop you from enjoying the book. If anything, I just kind of enjoyed being like, ooh, actually. If you haven't seen actually on YouTube, you should go see it. It's like that exact thing. Just being a total pedantic jerk about stuff that doesn't matter. The bigger thing that I do think is not something that's gonna ruin my enjoyment of the book, but might ruin someone's ability to get into the book in the first place, to pick it up in the first place, is this back copy. I feel like somehow, and I don't know if Gojan wrote this or who wrote this, but it somehow manages to miss everything that I loved about this book. It does put it in a like, oh, here's the character, here's the main character, here's the plot, here's the problem, here's what the character wants, here's what's in their way, here's what's gonna happen, that kind of thing, make it sound kind of interesting. But it just doesn't, for me, encompass anything that is great about this book. Okay, so here we go. A psychopath with size 16 shoes. I don't even know who that's referring to. Nursing home hookers. Yeah, there's one mention of a nursing home hooker. And an irreverent Las Vegas homicide detective with a gambling habit. We know he's irreverent because of the shit chapter. Gambling, again, just kind of mentioned once or twice. Not really seen as a big, certainly not what I would call a habit. Detective with a gambling habit set the tone for this offbeat tale of revenge and retribution. Yes. Blackjack addict Frank Savick, again, don't see him as an addict because I don't think he plays blackjack once in this book, is deeply in debt and facing family problems. Deeply in debt, yes. Family problems. His wife is in a home. Family problems makes it sound like kids or, bigger family dynamic. Facing family problems when he's asked to delay his retirement to catch a vigilante killer who murders other murderers in a manner the veteran cop has never seen. Yes, all true. And definitely his biggest, complicating event moment. That is where the book takes off. As I said, that's chapter 6. Absolutely. While dead bodies stack up in quick succession, the motorcycle riding policeman gets reluctantly involved with the desperate mother who will do anything to get justice for her dead son. The bodies do stack up. There are 2 in quick succession, and then that's kind of it for a while. And then we get Henry Mephisti at the end, and then William Jardine at the end. So there's a good chunk in the middle where there's no stacking going on at all. And then, yes, he is motorcycle riding once, maybe a couple times. It's not a major part of his character. Involved with a desperate mother who will do anything to get justice for her son. That makes it sound like it's a romance. And it is very specifically, there is a subplot in this book that's they were in an interrogation room after I think William Jardine was arrested. There was a moment where she got the wrong idea and then she is kind of pursuing him romantically, and he is very much I love my wife, this was misunderstanding, I don't want anything to do with this romantically. So getting him, it's almost like he's trying to not get in, but he's trying to pull out of his involvement with her because he's a victim. She's the victim's mother. She's, kind of a victim herself. She assaulted the guy in the courtroom. There's a lot of reasons. Cannot blame him for not wanting to get involved with that. So that's just kind of blatantly wrong. Savick, his investigation complicated by a suspected FBI cover-up and prison bribery scandal, basically mentioned once at the end of the book. Maybe it's something that Colt was working on, but it's very embedded. It's not, I didn't see it as anything that was hindering his investigation, or really it was a non-point. Is also unaware that the quirky murderer, which is a really weird way to describe a murderer, might also be the solution to his own financial and domestic dilemma. Only because, like, Colt randomly gave him a bunch of money at the end of the book. Also, I would not call Colt quirky. He is a deeply grief-stricken and tragic figure. His murders might be quirky. They're more just super twisted in, like, great ways for terrible people. Add the brooding backdrop of Venice, Italy, and a vengeful killer who reads Shakespeare, and you have a teasing psychological thriller where surgical bone saws and spiders are just tools of the trade. Venice is not, I mean, that makes it sound like it's set in Venice, and it's not at all. A vengeful killer who reads Shakespeare, I think he mentions Shakespeare, like, he mentions Shakespeare in the first chapter kind of offhandedly. And the spiders. The spiders do come back multiple times, and they're part of his Colt's final grand act of vengeance, which, again, the one thing I'm not gonna spoil because it's so fun. So that would be the one thing, I guess, was on here that I agreed with, is the spiders. So if spiders are your thing, this back cover might do it for you. Otherwise, yeah, it just feels like it's forcing a storyline that doesn't really exist. I mean, kind of exists if you sort of wind around all of the good bits and then just take some major liberties with other ones. But I mean, it's totally fixable. Like, I could write another back copy in an afternoon. I feel like I shit all over the book now, even though, like, I really loved it so much. I just wish the back cover contained some of the stuff that I loved in this book besides the spiders. But at least I do have the spiders, so that's something. And that about wraps it up for me on this episode of Indie Book Club 2022. The book again, Ashes in Venice. Go grab it wherever you buy your books. I know it's on Amazon. I'm sure it is other places as well. It is well worth your time if you like being entertained and also tear-jerked just a little bit. Our next installment of Indie Book Club will be in July, I want to say. April, May, June. February, March, April, May, June. It's June. It's going to be in June. It's a good thing I figured that out. And I actually am not sure which book I'm going to pick. I have two options. The first one is The Sentient by Nadia Afifi, I believe her name is. I met her. She's from Denver. I met her at the Las Vegas Writers Conference 2019. And this book was just coming out, I believe. I don't think it had been released quite yet. So I picked it up. I haven't read it yet, but I really want to. And then the other one is a book I just got when I was in Flagstaff by a Flagstaff writer called New Veronia by MS Co. This one's obviously a sci-fi type book. This one is a coming-of-age novel steeped in toxic masculinity and homespun rage. So that's something. So I'm not sure which one it's going to be. I should probably figure that out right now, huh? I know what I'll do. Sorry, okay. Dice here. So let's say even is New Veronia and odd is Nadia Afifi. And you're just gonna have to trust me that I'm doing this, okay? Here we go. Okay, it's a 1. It's a 1. So that means we're doing The Sentient. Ha! Yay! Well, that makes sense because I've had this book for longer. And then we'll probably do this one in September. There we go. I think I could know this schedule, but whatever. Now, if you've made it all the way to the end of this video and you're thinking, hey, it would be really great to get this kind of feedback on my work before I go to publish, well, you're in luck because that's exactly what I do here at the Ugly Cat Press. And as a special thank you for watching this whole video, you can use the discount code now showing on your screen to get a 20% off discount on any level of editing you choose. You can find more information on our services page or by emailing me at admin@uglycatpress.com. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great spring, have a great day, and we will see you next time.